All right, Nuggets fans, welcome into Pickaxe and Roll, brought to you by our good friends over at BetOnline. I am your host, Ryan Blackburn at NBA Blackburn on Twitter, part of the Mile High Sports Podcast Network, and I am here. I am ready to discuss the Denver Nuggets as they pull off a win last night, and it was a good win. Look, it wasn't perfect, and nobody's ever going to confuse that with the perfect Nuggets win. Unless you like stats. If you like stats and you like numbers and you like high scoring, then that was a perfect game for you. And if you like clutch moments, then that was a good game for you. Whatever the case, they finally won, and it was good to see. Good to see them breaking that little streak that they had formed over the course of this road trip. And hey, not going to be a winless road trip. That is important. Get to kind of get off the schneid a little bit, and we'll talk about what happens tonight against the Charlotte Hornets as well, as the Nuggets have to play a back-to-back. Fortunately, again, it's against Charlotte, so it should be a reasonable thing for them to do. We'll see what ultimately happens and then whether they can hold up their end of the bargain, but I'm still excited to see how this goes for Denver. My name is Ryan Blackburn. I am the senior NBA writer for Mile High Sports. Here's the Pickaxe and Roll podcast. I also do the Locked On Nuggets podcast over there. Got a whole bunch of different things going on. If you like the content, if you really enjoy this stuff, make sure to like and subscribe to the show. I've got a whole bunch of things coming out for Mile High over the course of these next few weeks. I've got a very big surprise that I can't break just yet, but really excited to see it still. We'll get into all of that in just a moment, but first I got to talk to everybody about BetOnline. It's Super Bowl weekend here at BetOnline, and they've got so many different things that they're presenting for that, so many different props. I guess this isn't Super Bowl weekend. Next week is Super Bowl weekend, but it is upcoming. You're going to want to check it out. You're going to want to see all of the great deals, all of the great fascinating prop bets that you can check out over there. If you don't like the NFL, you can still do NBA, college basketball, NHL, and more. There's a whole bunch of different options, and that's the great thing about BetOnline. They give you so many different things that you can do. They're the number one sports book in the world and doing great stuff over there. BetOnline, the game starts here. All right, let's get into it. We'll get into this flow. I watched back the game highlights just before popping on here and thought it was very interesting. Hey, we got a trade right before this podcast started. The Clippers are trading PJ Tucker, Mo Bamba, and a future second-round pick to the Jazz for Drew Eubanks and Patty Mills. All right, there we go. It doesn't look like... Actually, PJ Tucker might get bought out with the Jazz, so keep an eye on that. Keep an eye on him as a potential buyout guy for a contending team. Not sure it's going to ultimately happen, and not sure it's going to be for Denver, but that's an interesting little tidbit. Let's get back to the Nuggets. 137-134 win last night against the Philadelphia 76ers, and it could have been much better. Denver allowed 31 plus points in every single quarter, 36 in the first, 33 in the second, 31 in the third, and 34 in the fourth. The good thing, though, is that they also scored 30 plus in every quarter and only ever lost one of those quarters, the third quarter, by just 1 point. They just outpaced the hot offense that the Sixers were putting together. Tyrese Maxey had 42. Kelly Oubre had 27. But more importantly than either of those two numbers, Gershon Yabusele had 28 points. He was killing it. And a lot of those actually came against Nikola Jokic. And the defense that was played last night, going back and watching again, waiting to see the baskets that were given up, so many more of them were in the first half, in I think a very underwhelming half from the Nuggets. I do think that they not tightened up, but got a little bit better in the second half. It didn't feel as bad, especially from the starters. But it was mostly the first half where the defense was truly horrible, truly wretched. And I think yeah, Denver's conserving energy. They're doing that thing where they save a whole bunch of energy on the defensive end. T asks here, do you think Jokic is resting on defense until the playoffs begin, or is it something deeper? I can't speak to whether it's something deeper. I think that there's been some frustration from Jokic, but I also know that, yeah, these guys know that they burned out in the playoffs last year and know that they do have to not go 100%, especially in late January. Today is February 1st. I think anytime before the All-Star break, it's reasonably okay to not go 100% in the regular season if you have high expectations for the playoffs. The problem that the Nuggets have is that they are like, when they don't give 100% effort, they're not a good defense, like very clearly. And you need your center specifically to give high effort in these situations because he's the one that papers over the mistakes and does a lot of things for the perimeter defenders. Denver, I think, in the past has had a better perimeter defense contingent than they do right now. But I digress. We will see what ultimately happens if there's changes that are made to the roster, but I don't want to get into that particularly right now. Let's just talk about this game. Jokic and the Nuggets defense was horrible, and trying to get through it was very interesting. There was a lot of passing. There was a lot of good offense on both sides of the floor. There were really, really impressive offensive possessions, but just not a lot of impressive defensive possessions from either side. With Philly, you kind of understand that because they're so hurt and so overwhelmed from an injury perspective. Joel Embiid, of course, did not play. Paul George didn't play, but even Andre Drummond didn't play. And when you don't have any size against the Nuggets, it's not just Joker that actually has that impact. It's Michael Porter Jr. cutting inside. It's Aaron Gordon. Gordon didn't really get super involved in this game, but 4 of 6 from the field. Michael Porter was 10 of 14. Nikola Jokic was 11 of 16. Christian Braun was 6 of 10. Even Peyton Watson, who's struggled to finish at times, 3 of 4. It really did feel like the Nuggets were just getting whatever they wanted on the offensive end. And that is a good sign. And I know that people are going to really point to the defense. And I kind of pointed to the defense last night as, hey, this is a big concern. But anytime you can get a win and break a losing streak, you do it however you can. And just scoring and being reminded that the Nuggets offense is still elite, I'm serious, is still elite, is great to watch. And Joker was great for most of the night. And Jamal Murray was great for most of the night. Jamal had a fantastic game. Overall shooting percentage doesn't necessarily reflect it entirely, but 31 points, 11 assists, 6 rebounds, a steal, and a block. I thought his defense was mostly fine. 12 of 22 from the field, still 0 of 4 from 3, 7 of 7 from the line, but this was a true throwback performance. He broke out the afro, and it looks tremendous. It really does. That should be his hairstyle for the rest of the year. I know he'll probably change it up. He'll probably go back to a variety of other things, whether it's twists, whether it's whatever. But that was a great look. I don't know if he did it because of Dr. J, but it looked like the Dr. J afro in Philly. It was awesome. And he played like a 1970s, 1980s point guard, if I'm being honest. Not a ton of outside shots. He kept driving. He was aggressive. He found lanes. He was cutting. And he set the table, had only 1 turnover the entire night and 11 assists. It was a really tremendous performance. And I do think that, again, I know I'm generally very negative on most of my live tweeting stuff because I just have high expectations for this group. I know what they can achieve. And so when they're not achieving that, it's to me, it's okay. So what is going on? What's going wrong? But what's going right for the Nuggets right now, and over the last 10 games, Jamal Murray is averaging 25 points per game in his last 10. That does include the 45-point performance that he had. So obviously, maybe that's an outlier. But this is multiple games with 33 points. This one was 31. But he's had 31 points and 33 points in the last game. How many times has he had 30 plus in the last couple of years, let alone this year? I really do think that Jamal is turning a little bit of a corner here. And this is a really good sign for the Nuggets that it isn't just Jokic that has to carry things on the offensive end. It feels like Murray is really taking on some of that responsibility, and they're in a good place with that offensively. Part of that is like the staggered minutes with Jamal running the second unit. You've got Julian Strawther, and last night it was Julian Strawther, Peyton Watson, Christian Braun, and Aaron Gordon. And Gordon having to stagger with the second unit, not always great. I know that they're trying stuff right now for the 8-man rotation. They will continue to play DeAndre Jordan at times. They will, but like I am glad that they are trying this and really trying to get a good look. Could this be a playoff lineup that the Nuggets go to? Murray, Strawther, Braun, Watson, Gordon? Absolutely. And if Jamal is playing like this, they can survive with that group out there. Russ is more of a guy that plays with Jokic pretty strictly, and Christian Braun has done a little bit more as a creator. Julian Strawther still somebody that they can trust. Aaron Gordon is switching on like 1 through 5. Peyton Watson switching 1 through 5. That really helps. And no, the defense wasn't great. And even with that lineup, it wasn't just with Joker out there. It was with that bench lineup out there as well. Just every time the Nuggets were not really defending. But I'm looking more at the offense for this game, and just the fact that they're able to get that done, it is very, very impressive. I thought Jamal ran the unit very well. And then in the clutch, this is, I think, the defining moment of the last 4 games. Jamal's had it going, and he's had a really good road trip, despite the fact, because he had 25 on 16 shots against Minnesota. He didn't have that efficient of a performance against Chicago, but then he had 33 versus Chicago, or that against New York, and he had 31 and 11 assists last night. And so he could have taken a bunch of shots down the stretch, but he took 0 shots in clutch time. I mentioned this last night and wanted to make sure to state it again today. When you've got a guy who has really been focused on getting himself going and getting himself back into not shape, but playing the way that he's supposed to play, it would be pretty easy for him to just take shots in that situation. But he didn't do that. He got out of the way. He got off the ball. He drew 2 to him, fed Jokic, and made sure to set up the best player in the world. And Jokic, for all the weird stuff that happened through the first 3.5 quarters of the game, had 13 points in clutch time alone. He finished with 28, 9, and 13. But he had 13 points in clutch time. And Murray set him up on at least 2 or 3 of those possessions. I think Gordon set him up on one of them. And it was just really great to watch the Nuggets operate in clutch time again. It's been a while since Denver has been in a clutch time game and executed that well on the offensive end. I know the defense is still something they're going to have to work through. It really is. But I was glad to watch what we saw. I was glad to see that, look, Denver still has that gear on the offensive end. They can continue to do the important things when generating elite shots for everybody on the floor. Jamal set up Michael Porter on a left corner kick-out 3 as well. Jokic set up Christian Braun on an easy cut. Yes, the Philadelphia 76ers are horrible defensively. Not trying to overstate what this is. But again, anytime you can get a win following a 3-game losing streak, you can't really complain about the way that they did it. So I'm glad to see it. I'm glad to see that Denver kind of straightened it up a little bit, and was great to see Jokic kind of come back to form in that last few minutes, and then Murray kind of carry things throughout in a different way. So good to see. Naboya says, Ryan, am I realistic if I expect 10 win streaks since the Philly game up to the Lakers? A 10-game winning streak, huh? Not realistic, but it is possible. Just looking at the schedule that the Nuggets have upcoming, you are right that if Denver kind of stays on track, there's no reason why they can't rattle off a win streak. No reason at all. Will it happen? This team is still so inconsistent, and the effort defensively is still so inconsistent that I don't believe it will happen. But I mean, what am I going to say? That, I believe they're going to win 10 in a row. No, I think that it's possible, and I'm glad that you brought it up, because there is light at the end of this tunnel, despite the fact that the Nuggets have, I think, looked pretty bad over the course of this road trip. There is still light at the end of the tunnel if they're able to get their stuff in order. So we'll see what happens. The schedule gets very easy. Whether the Nuggets take advantage of it or not, that remains to be seen. When we come back, we're going to talk about Michael Porter Jr., Christian Braun, Julian Strawther, and Denver's wing situation. There's a lot to like about what those guys provided in this game in particular. We'll be right back on Pickaxe and Roll. All right, we are back. Pickaxe and Roll. Ryan Blackburn here. Thank you so much for tuning into the show. Appreciate the love and support on the podcast, folks. If you can, please hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Check out some of the stuff that I've written over at Mile High Sports. On Thursday, I wrote a long-form article about Denver's trade options heading into the trade deadline, like what their mentality should be, what they're supposed to accomplish, how they can accomplish it, things like that. Spoiler, it's not a ton, but you're not going to get any analysis better than that. Like, I am going to be pretty arrogant about that one. I think I did the best job of anybody locally of explaining what is going on with the Nuggets and their trade assets and what they can do versus what they will probably do. So check it out, milehighsports.com. Okay. Let's go over Michael Porter, Christian Braun, Julian Strawther. Thought that those guys in particular had really great offensive games. The box score, of course, says it, and I'm not like breaking any news here if you have checked out what happened last night. But Michael Porter, 24 points, 10 of 14 from the field, 2 of 3 from 3. Did have a block. I don't actually remember when it happened, but 6 rebounds. It was very interesting to watch Michael Porter's night because he was cutting and driving so heavily and didn't really space a ton. There were not a lot of opportunities where he just sat out there and was able to catch and fire on threes. Denver as a team only attempted 23 three-pointers for the entire game. They shot 12 of 23, 52%. They shot 17 of 18 from the line, 94%, and 66% from the field overall, 54 of 82. It was a very impressive shooting display from Denver. But once again, one of the reasons why this game was close was because Philly also shot 52% from three, just like the Nuggets, but they had 21 three-pointers because they are so much smaller. They generate so much space. Tyrese Maxey is extremely aggressive from the perimeter, but they also have the guy in Gershon Yabusele, Justin Edwards, Eric Gordon shot 3 of 3, Kelly Oubre shot 2 of 4. Like, they were built to shoot threes and space the floor and jack up shots. Denver's not built to do that. They're built to take advantage of smaller teams like the Sixers offensively, where they have the size advantage and they just cut to the rim over and over and over again. And it worked. And if I'm going to go pull up Michael Porter's shot chart right now, because I think his is very emblematic. Michael Porter had one mid-range jumper, and it was kind of a driving, floating jump shot. He had 3 shots on the perimeter, all like one at the top of the key, 2 on the left wing. And then he had 10 shots in the paint. Made 7 of them. It's just very impressive to see that. And I tend to think that because of Denver's size, because Aaron Gordon's out there, Christian Braun's out there, Michael Porter's out there, this is always going to be their identity if they're playing at that size. There are going to be very few opportunities where teams can get in the way of their interior defense, of like their interior scoring. Denver's identity as a team is they just want to do that specifically. And Michael Porter is also just trying to find ways to be productive and efficient, but he was doing it on the offensive glass, on cuts, and he was dunking, he was hitting layups, he was getting some tips every now and then. It was a very good performance from him overall. But it is just funny to me. This isn't a criticism of him. Like, he still shot 24 points on 14 shots. But the way that he was able to get it, like, for one of Denver's best 3-point shooters, was he shot 2 of 3 from 3. 2 of 3. And Denver still has to figure out how to get more of these threes up. But again, against this Sixers team, there was no reason for them to. They had 137 points despite the fact that they barely shot from 3 at all. So, again, I'm not surprised that this happens. But Denver's playing a dangerous game when they don't generate the outside shots and they just try to drive to the rim a whole bunch. And a team that is able to prevent those interior shots a little bit more, Denver will then step outside and they will attempt more perimeter shots. I have no doubt in my mind. But when Denver finds a team that is able to do that, that's when we're really going to see whether Denver's offense can hold up, especially in a playoff setting, because so many teams just can't handle what the Nuggets are trying to do driving to the rim. And Michael Porter, I think, is a pretty interesting emblem of that. Christian Braun is also a very impressive example of that too. But he was shooting the perimeter shots pretty well. Like, I'm looking at the shot chart for him now. He had 5 outside jumpers. He had actually 6 outside jumpers if you count the deep 2 that he had, where he rocked a Dembona to sleep and then just shot the pull-up 2 over him. And he shot 2 of 3 in the key. That was great. It was awesome to watch him, especially in that first quarter, early second quarter portion. Christian, I think, is going to eventually find himself back in the starting unit. I don't think he's going to come off the bench for a long time. That would be my guess. That's just an educated guess at this point. But for the time being, he has really adjusted and done a good job of finding opportunities to score consistently. J.K. Walrus says, pretty decent CB game. Maxey was abusing him at the end of the game, though. Like, Maxey's crazy, man. The shots that Maxey was hitting, some of them were easier, but some of them were tough. And Christian tried to force as many tough shots as they possibly could. That's Maxey's game. And anytime he goes to his right, like, it is just very comfortable for him. So I wonder if that's just a game plan thing for CB. He probably just needed to cut off Maxey's right hand a little bit more. But Maxey's so quick and athletic. Like, he had 42, and on one of his drives to the left, when Aaron Gordon was switched out onto him, he just drove right by Aaron Gordon. I think Gordon was trying to do what I was talking about and cut off the right hand. And Maxey's like, oh, I can just get by you to the left. And he absolutely did. So that is a really tough place for Denver to be. And if Denver has a whole bunch of issues with small guards like that, then they're going to be in a pretty tough spot when they play the Memphis Grizzlies, when they play the Houston Rockets with Jalen Green. They'll be in a tough spot with Anthony Edwards regardless, because Edwards is really good. It's not that he's quick. He is quick. He's very athletic, but he's also powerful. But not necessarily with the Lakers, not with the Clippers. Is there any other team that is Shea? Like, Shea's going to be tough because it's Shea, but not because of his lightning quick speed like Tyrese Maxey. So it'll be interesting to watch. Will be interesting to track. Denver, like you guys know, is a lot better against more like less athletic players. They're definitely better against those guys. So does Denver need another perimeter defender? Probably. They probably do. But Christian is just one guy, and he probably is going to improve against those quicker guys going forward. This is a good year of experience for him, and I would expect him to get a lot better at this. We'll see whether he actually does. And then Julian Strawther. Sometimes his inefficiencies can hurt. Last night, his efficiency helped. 18 points, 6 of 7 from the field, 4 of 5 from 3. One of the 2-pointers that he hit was right at the end of the first quarter. Really nice kind of pull-up 2 going to his right. Probably got fouled, if I'm being honest. But that is exactly I've compared him to Terrence Ross in the past, just a quick spark plug off the bench, a wing that can get hot. That was a Terrence Ross performance. 18 points on 7 shots, 4 of 5 from the field, 2 of 2 from the line. 0 assists, didn't need to pass that much. He did get a steal. I remember the exact possession as well. And I think it was against Kelly Oubre where Kelly just tried to drive at him and Julian just poked the ball away. He was one of the only guys that actually got defense into the game in the fourth quarter. It was great to watch. The progress that he's making is very important. And when you try to ask me, I've had people ask me this question before. Would you rather go forward with Christian Braun, Peyton Watson, Julian Strawther? If you had to pick, who would you pick? If you had to predict who's going to be the best player by the end of it, who would you pick? And I just don't know whether you can make a determination yet. I think Christian is going to be the steadiest guy. He's going to be the steadiest starter. But Julian's highs on the offensive end are going to be higher. And Peyton's highs on the defensive end are going to be higher. I thought Peyton was not great in this last game defensively. Not his fault necessarily. There was not a lot of defense being played regardless. But it was still good to see. Peyton had some really nice passes as well. And he does the other stuff. But Julian scores. And in the NBA, if you can score the basketball, there's always going to be a place for you. And on the season, let me just look this up really quick. Julian Strawther's at 43.9% from the field, 37.9% from 3, 84% from the line. The free throw percentage has gone up. The 3-point percentage has gone up. The field goal percentage and the 2-point percentage has gone up. Across the board, he has been much better as a scorer this year. 57.5% true shooting. Yes, the defense still needs to improve. But the more he plays with Jokic, the easier the shots are going to be. And if he can hold up defensively at times, the Nuggets are going to need that. They just are. Having somebody else that can go off the dribble, having somebody that can space the floor like he can, so important. So, again, I do think that if I had to pick between any of those guys, I couldn't at this stage because we just don't know enough. We'll know a little bit more after the playoffs, but we'll see what ultimately it looks like after the season. So a good win. I know it didn't feel good, and I know that a lot of Nuggets fans are wondering about the defense. The defense has really fallen off. I thought it was going to be a lot better by this point. The other thing, Russell Westbrook went out with a hamstring injury. We'll see whether he plays tonight. I kind of doubt that he plays tonight, second night of a back-to-back. You just want to protect the 17-year veteran. It's a hamstring injury. You don't want to make that a continuous issue. But if he doesn't play, maybe Jalen Pickett gets in. And I wonder if Denver kind of opens up the door a little bit for a 10-man rotation at that, or a 9-man rotation again. And they get DeAndre Jordan in there, they get Jalen Pickett in there, and they start Christian Braun again. That would be my expectation. But yeah, we will see what happens. Final thing before we go. Was this losing streak that Denver was on a blip or something more? I've had a variety of folks come to me and say, this is really bad. Like Denver's in a really bad spot. I've also had a variety of people that say, why are you overreacting to what's going on right now? This is 3 losses on the road. 1 was against Minnesota, yes, but 2 were against Eastern Conference teams. Why are you making such a big deal of this? And it's tough because, like, every time the Nuggets try to give you the confidence that you need to bet on them, not like actual money, but just believe that they are going to get the job done, they remind you that they are flawed. And it's the defense, but it's also sometimes the decision-making. It's the fact that they are starting Russell Westbrook, who, like, despite the fact, yes, he has really shown out, one of the reasons why they're starting him was because the initial plan was flawed. And the Nuggets figured that out. And they're like, hey, maybe we should change something. And that's kind of an admission of sorts that they couldn't just go back to what was happening before because they didn't think that was good enough. And so I don't know how to feel about that. I'm just being fully honest. I still don't think the Nuggets have enough to win a title. But that doesn't mean that they can't. And it, like, especially when Jokic and Murray play like they play in the clutch, I'm going to ignore the defensive issues for now. The defensive issues are a thing. If you remember the 2018 Cleveland Cavaliers that had LeBron and Kevin Love and a whole mix of guys that, like, maybe could have been successful but weren't that great. If you remember that team, they were pretty shaky throughout the entire time during the regular season. And they went to a Game 7 against the Indiana Pacers in the first round. And then they struggled in the other playoff rounds. And then they still found themselves in the NBA Finals because LeBron is awesome and because they just had enough with LeBron James. Could the same happen with Jokic? Yes, absolutely. I know it's a slightly different era, slightly different time. This is 7 years later. But could the Nuggets just overcome a whole bunch of other teams? Some of the inconsistencies with some of these other teams and the age-related question marks and the inexperience of the OKC Thunder? Sure. Do I expect it to happen? No, I don't. And that's okay. Like, they're going to have to prove me wrong on that front. Like, I think unless something changes drastically and unless the mentality changes drastically, I'm just going to assume that they are not good enough and not locked in enough from top to bottom in order to get it done. I hope I'm proven wrong by that. I would love nothing more. You guys know, I say this all the time. Like, I don't have a problem with being wrong. I don't. If people are just ginormous buttholes about it when I'm wrong, then yeah, then I start to get a little bit annoyed and sensitive about it. But for the most part, I don't have an issue with being wrong. I'm not perfect at this thing. How could anybody predict whether the Nuggets are going to win a championship or not? Every stat that you have out there says that you need basically a top 10 offense, top 10 defense in order to win a title. And the Nuggets are clearly not top 10 on defense. But they are an elite offense, and they do have championship experience, and they do have guys that can step up in different moments. And I just think that we're going to need to wait to see it and wait to see whether they succeed or fail before actually making that final determination. Like, that's a tough place for analysts like me to be, because I can't write them off. I simply can't. Even though everything in my fiber of my being is like, yeah, I don't like what I'm seeing. So we'll figure it out. Maybe the trade deadline changes some stuff. Maybe the buyout market changes some stuff. I doubted on that last part. And maybe the playoff matchups change it up. Maybe Denver doesn't even have to face OKC because they lose to Dallas again, and then Denver has to beat Dallas. Do you think that Denver can beat Dallas in a playoff series? Sure. Will they? I don't know. But they can. Maybe they don't have to play Minnesota because another team takes out Minnesota because Minnesota's geared up to beat Denver and not so much other teams. Who knows? But I'm curious to see how it goes. I'm curious to see what it looks like. And we'll just have to evaluate it on the fly because we won't be able to evaluate it in the moment right now. You can be critical and I can be critical all I want to, but this team does have championship experience and you just can't write them off until they're actually eliminated. All right. That is going to do it for this episode of Pickaxe and Roll. Denver plays Charlotte tonight. I don't know what's going to happen. What I do know is that I'm not podcasting after. Like we'll see what happens. I'm going to probably take the rest of the weekend off and do a podcast on Monday. Denver plays 3 games and 4 nights at home on Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday. And the trade deadline, of course, is on Thursday. A lot of stuff is going to happen. I'm going to try to do as much as I can from a content perspective during that time, but we'll see whether that ultimately happens because there's just a ton of stuff. So bear with me, folks. Thank you so much for tuning into the show. If you're new, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Would love to see you stick around. I will talk to you guys next week.